I'm not going to compare myself to the person who sits next to me or that person that sits next to me. I might learn things from them, but they're not me. They're not going through my journey. I'm going to be slightly better than I was the day before.
Arien, welcome back. We're so happy that you're joining us once again on the Zista podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for having me. Very excited to have another chat.
Awesome. Today, we have a really exciting set of questions to cover with you. We're talking about how you can really unlock creative careers, and your students want to progress from, say, the classroom to the industry, and not just progress, but actually be successful professionals. So, let's go straight into the meat of the matter. And let me ask you this, okay? What do you see as the biggest gap between classroom learning and real world creative industries?
Yeah, it's a hard one to answer really because it totally depends on the type of student that you are and the type of worker that you are, I guess. I think the biggest thing that I see is you can do so much preparing for an industry, but that first day is always going to be hard work. I think it's probably easier to provide a bit more context by saying the hardest thing from from secondary school, what we call secondary school, or before you go into a university, that jump of no hand holding, you have to learn at pace, and uh, you have to do the work. You can't just sit back, wait for the knowledge to pour into your brain. It's exactly the same thing that happens from this step to industry as well. Um, when it comes to the biggest gap that I see, um, really, like, in my type of an environment in tertiary studies, you can make mistakes. You can make mistakes with very low consequences. We can help support and build up. Obviously, if you make mistakes in the industry, people will be kind and willing to help you. But if you keep repeating those mistakes,
Sure.
I feel like that's probably the biggest thing. So that work ethic of understanding that it's okay to make those mistakes, but it's also important to learn from those mistakes because those mistakes do cost quite a lot of money when you're working to a deadline, working to a release date, and what'll happen is they'll just go, "Ooh, okay, maybe we won't give you that type of a shot, and we'll pass it on to someone else, and they are the ones that are going to shine."
Awesome. Awesome. When I look at students today, I also feel, as someone who's working in the industry, that it's also about expectation management. So a lot of young professionals enter organizations and they think they're going to progress to a manager level really fast. And I think it's a function of the accessibility to fantastic content, accessibility to fantastic tools and technologies that has made everything instant and now. And I want it yesterday. So people really feel that, okay, I'm going to do this and wow, bingo, I'm going to be a manager. But the fact of the matter is that the industry wants to groom talent, wants to make sure that they're ready for the next role, and only then help a person progress to that role when they're ready. So it's a really individual thing. There's no right answer. Someone may progress faster, but managing expectations, I think, is also a really important point in this particular aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. And the I have a rule, a rule of progression, if you will, for myself. I'm not going to compare myself to the person who sits next to me or that person that sits next to me. I might learn things from them, but they're not me. They're not going
Right.
through my journey. My rule is to make sure that my day is slightly better, or I'm using slightly better ways of and techniques of using the tools or managing students or whatever it might be. I'm going to be slightly better than I was the day before, and that's really the best I can do, and the best that I can make sure that I am progressing and I'm going through and really hitting what I need to hit. What you said is absolutely correct, where you know, students have access to technology, access to tutorials. So we get a lot of students that will come in and just be like, "I know how to do that. Why do I need to do that?" And then they'll just do this and not pay attention. And yes, you might be able to get the result, but do you know why we got that result? Do you know how to get that result outside of that tutorial that you did?
Interesting.
And so we've got a process where we can recognize prior learning of students from other tertiary education and provide them to skip that class or cross credit to go on to the next class. Personally, I don't like doing that, mainly because the way that we teach is a sequential staircase learning style where you understand the pipeline and why you're doing all that. And if you bypass some of that information, when it comes to later on, you've got a gap that just can't be filled. We've got a generation of talent that has some pretty amazing skill set that scaffolds so high. However, the foundation is not there. So what happens when you put pressure on it and ask it's kind of yeah, if you ask slightly different questions or you ask them to do the same thing but in a slightly different way, they get all tangled and can't quite pivot and change that way, and that's vital in the industry. So I think that that's a really important thing to acknowledge and one that you've just mentioned now.
I really like the points you mentioned, Aryan, and that point about personal benchmarking is something that I personally, strongly believe in as well. So you should not compare yourself to others. You should compare yourself to your previous self. Are you a better version of yourself today than you were yesterday? And if you are, then well, you're on the right path. And
Talk
that
about this 30-second bubble. You have 30
Sure.
second oh, I gained this, so I did Ironman, triathlon, long distance triathlon, and I had a real problem with, thinking about the finish line, so I was so consumed with thinking of the finish line that everyone was passing me. I wasn't in the moment. I could only think of making a movie or getting to the finish line or whatever it might be. So I actually talked to a race car driver that
okay.
happened to be working around a place that I was working at. And he said, I have the same issue with race cars, with teaching people how to race cars, Formula One, say. Um, what you need to do is you need to be in a bubble. You got 30 seconds in front of you, 30 seconds behind you, and what you're doing now.
Wow.
So what you have to do is you have to use the 30 seconds behind you to evaluate what you did wrong so you can what you're doing now. You have 30 seconds in front of you to be aware of what's around you and change only what you can do in that moment. So it's kind of a way, almost like a meditation, to kind of keep you in the moment and keep you aware of your surroundings. Whatever you did like a minute ago, you can't change that, but you can use the 30 seconds to influence what you're doing right now.
Awesome. Being in the now, it's so important. You know, Aryan, I was listening to a podcast on the TED Audio Collective just the other day, and I heard this lovely phrase. So it's in Maori, and I don't remember the phrase, but what it translated to is that I walk backwards to the future. I walk backwards to the future with my eyes clearly fixed on the past. And what it was trying to say is that it's really important to learn from your mistakes. It's really important to look at history, right? I remember now. So it was a podcast on how we can look at history and study history in a very intelligent way to understand how we can solve the problems that we're facing today. And if we don't, do that, we're doomed to commit the same mistakes that we've made in the past, right? So we've heard that phrase before. So in that podcast ended with this lovely Maori phrase, and I kind of got goosebumps when I heard that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the plot of every sci-fi film, right? Is that it's the social construct of yeah, it's the social construct of what we've done before, And here's some technology to make sure we don't do it. But inevitably, we always fall back into what we did regardless because we forget what our forefathers did. We forget where we are. One of my favorite quotes is standing on the shoulders of giants, you know. But if you stand on it just thinking that it's your entitled right and your entitled ground to be standing on, you've earned your right to be there because you're standing just on any ground, and forget that you're standing on your forefathers' shoulders who are
Absolutely.
elevating you higher than you could ever be before. That's when we as a society, global society, break down. Unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of that in politics and in the world in general. And it's my personal vendetta to just remind people that it's you in the moment, moving forward, and what can you do? And it helps with everything. This 30-second bubble will help you with life, it'll help you be grounded. Um, and, it's a scary world out there, but if you are focused and in the moment, um, you're protected as well. You've got yourself to just be aware. And, one of my favorite things to do is walk along the street and look up. No one looks up anymore. You know, I was sitting there on the deck having a drink with my cousin the other day, and I looked up and I saw the moon and I said, "God, no wonder why a generation of human beings decided that place, that rock, is somewhere that I want to visit because I don't understand it." You know, Instead we're just so focused on the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And this goes back to your first question about like what you might get blindsided by in the industry is the industry can find someone to replace you. Anyone can do your job. Anyone can
Right.
press buttons. It's your ability to decide in what order and what sequence those buttons get pressed, which will be your significant digital fingerprint and your specific solution to that task. That's why you get hired, and that's ultimately why you end up getting more money than other people.
Awesome. Awesome. Fantastic. Okay. Aryan, I want to ask you, and this is also maybe a fluffy. How can students identify which creative path might be most suitable to them? But I thought you being a professor, a learning facilitator, you'd be have a lot more experience in this matter to answer this.
Yeah, absolutely. Our first year students, they do a lot of generalist studies. So they go off and learn a bit of animation, movement, animating a 3D object, 3D character. They do modeling, texturing, and rendering. Really kind of bread and butter of creating 3D objects. But we also do compositing as well. So compositing, putting video plate or movie plates together with CG, integrating them, making sure that they look like they belong. Um, and at the end of their first year, they have to choose what they want to be when they grow up. So we're very limited, or we work really hard to give them some presentations on what each one does, but that decision will set them on a 2-year path of focusing on animation,
Right.
technical direction for generalist 3D, or compositing. Um, and there are times when students will come up to me and they say, "What do I do?" This is a life decision. I'm going to be this if I go there. I'm going to be this if I go there. I'm like, look, you got such a long life to go for.
Life is really a long journey. So the
My first initial answer is what makes you go into work, go into school, go into uni, and sit down when it's dark, sit down, do some work, look up, check the time and go, "Oh, no, I gotta go home," and go out the door and it's dark again. What makes time stand still? What are your aha moments? What are the things that you
Mm.
really makes your heart just sing? In Harry Potter, there's Professor Slughorn is talking to Tom Riddle about a topic, or is it Harry? It is Harry. I think it's Harry. Anyway, someone online screaming at me.
Sure.
And that the time a time sands of time stand still when you're having that one discussion or that one integral moment where everything just makes your heart sing. So follow your heart. When you have a decision to make around what you should be, also remember that that's not the only thing that you can ever do in your life. It just so happens that you're focusing on that bit. In my life, I've been a compositor, I've been a 3D generalist, I've been an animator, I've been a creative technologist, I've been a knitter, I've been a singer, I've been an actor, I've been a sailor, and I've been an Ironman athlete, and all of these things I've been really good at the time. So just be aware that any experience that you have will be an experience that will help build your portfolio. It'll help build you as a person as well.
It only enriches you, all these experiences, yeah, and so
Well,
no, but I love the way you described it, Aryan.
especially in movie making, what you're doing is you're mimicking real life, and any experience that you know and understand will make sure that you have a much more robust project. And after all we can do is mimic real life. We can't create real life. It's just never going to happen. They're pixels on the screen. It's numbers. That's all it is. Zeros and ones. Um, but what we can do is we can observe and we can use what we do. In fact, one of the things, motion capture technology has to be dumbed down because our refresh rate in our eyes, doesn't pick up the subtle movements that in motion capture does. So motion capture will pick up really weird, jerky movements, as well as introduce noise from the sensors that we actually have to go through and dumb down and take away.
Right.
So real life, you don't want it to be generic. You want it to be pretty. You want the key light to be golden, and you want the fill light to just have enough pop.
Correct.
You want to create chiaroscuro lighting to mimic the noir feel. But you have to know what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, and it occurs to me that, sometimes when you see animation flicks that come out from, say, from Disney or Pixar or DreamWorks, when you look at some of those shots and you realize, wow, that was a fantastic movie. It got over in less than 2 hours, but it probably took them years to make it. And it's been a labor of love, where someone has been fuming and fretting about perhaps the way someone's hair is falling, or maybe how natural, perhaps unnatural someone's hand might be looking. And it's the detailing, I am not an animation professional. Okay, I'm a marketing person. Okay, I deal with a lot of content. I do a lot of social media marketing. And therefore I pay attention to these details. And when I see that, I'm just amazed with the amount of detailing that is done today. It's amazing. Is the only thing I can say.
I make a point now. I sit there and watch the end credits of any movie that I watch, just as a bit of a thank you very much for putting that hard work in. And I know that behind every one name, there's like 70 or hundreds and hundreds of people that got left off that credit list. The
Oh,
amount
okay.
of people that work on films that don't get credited is just insane. But being on set, I was on set for Cowboy Bebop, the Netflix film TV series that was filmed here in New Zealand, and the amount of different departments that worked in unison together, almost like a hive. Yes, there's a director that tells, but they're really telling the camera and what's happening in that particular moment. There's people doing catering. There's people driving people around. There's program coordinators or project coordinators, PAs, whatever it is, all just doing their own thing, but all of them are coming together to work towards this final project. So the industry and the way that it works is just fascinating.
Awesome. I'd love it if we could, use at this point, try and focus on perhaps an individual story. I think it'll be really
Mhm.
interesting if we do. So, could you tell us maybe the story of a student that you have, personally coached who successfully transitioned to the industry, and what really helped them stand out? Uh,
Yeah, I've got the perfect example for you. So in a room full of, I had one specific class that, sometimes you have classes that just blend into other classes, and there are times when you just have these standout classes. And this time in particular, I had 4 or 5 like just out the gate spectacular students who I really knew what they were trying to achieve and doing it well. And I had this one student who was just the nicest guy. He came in with the expectations of doing something spectacular. Yet the skill level that he came in with, uh, he hadn't spent as much time on the tools as some of the top guys had.
Sure.
Um, so that's always the difference between someone amazing and someone who isn't what some people might say any good. Is they've just not had the level of exposure to the tools or the concepts that they had. So this student at the start of the year really struggled. They really struggled to hit their straps and understand some of these core concepts. But that student was there from 8:30 in the morning till 9 o'clock at night, and he will
Wow.
specifically sit with the students that were really good, and he wouldn't ask them, like, really annoying questions, so they would just go
Yeah.
sit.
How do you do that? Can you show that again?
What he did was he just listened, he opened his ears, and he let
Mm,
the world of 3D and the techniques just wash over him to the
wow.
point where at the end of the year, he got the best grade. So
Whoa.
because he put his time and effort into listening, being humble and not showboating or ponying around and prancing around saying I'm the best. And the student worked so well, and his ideas were so out the gate and really interesting. So he went back to Russia, and he ended up working at a Russian effects company, and doing such an amazing job working on local industry film over there. But that gave me one of my most favorite lessons, and that is, how do you become a swimmer? And it's not listening to theories and, reading a textbook.
You need to jump
It's
in.
you need to jump in, and you need to figure out what works for you. You need to not figure out what works for you. You need to look at other people swimming and try and copy their stroke. You might not understand why, but eventually you'll figure it out.
Correct. And I think in the context of swimming, there's also this survival instinct that kicks in, so we're not in our most natural environment. And there's one part of us that just cares that I'm gonna make it through this.
Yep.
So I think if students have that drive, that I'm gonna master this, or I'm gonna really not for anyone else, but for myself. I'm gonna do this for me. And I have that drive, if they have the motivation for the right set of reasons, there's no stopping them.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, with different types of tools at hand, tutorials and places like universities that really can help focus that passion in that direction. Sky's the limit.
Awesome. Um, as a way to kind of wrap this session, I wanted to ask you, Aryan, if there's any overarching advice that you'd like to give to students. Do you think there are some soft skills that they should pay extra attention to if they really want to succeed in creative roles?
Yeah, I think that. The idea that a lot of students, specifically in my industry, but even in games, and, digital media, whatever else it might be, is to think that you're going to change the world, when you're starting to learn something. You can do that, but there's a very minority group that will be able to change the world in that way. So the idea of a lot of students will come in and say, I'm going to make this movie and it's going to be 2 hours long and it's going to be amazing. You've got to put the one step in front of the other in order to achieve that. I'll give you a tiny little example of this. My 6-year-old daughter, Thea, she is so creative. She's really into Minecraft at the moment, and it's amazing watching this little brain learn and understand a bit of coding, understand how that all works. She's been doing a lot of creative writing, with Minecraft characters, and so she wanted to make a book. So she got some paper and stapled it together and wrote this little story. And then she came up to me and said, "Dad, you're a teacher. You
Hmm.
teach how to make movies. I want to make this movie." And we had just finished reading Harry Potter, so that equals Harry Potter 2. That equals watching the movie, and she was a bit scared about this. There's a snake at the end of Harry Potter 2, but she was really brave, and she watched it, and then she watched it again and watched it again to make sure she wasn't scared of it. But she was so inspired by the 3D that was in front of her that she came to me and said, "Dad, you're a movie maker. We need to make my book into a movie." And I thought, cool, I've got a phone. I'll pick up my phone, we'll record, I'll be the creeper, you can be the Enderman, we can do this close up, long shot, mid shot, and it'll be fine.
Amazing.
Just make up on whatever. She said, "No, I don't want that." I was like, "What are you talking about?" She said, "I want it to be exactly the same quality and look like the snake in Harry Potter 2." I
Oh,
said,
like no cutting corners. I want the whole shebang.
"I'm so sorry, my darling girl. I cannot make that happen." Um, what I could do was I could use AI and the voice to text with her for her to talk to AI as a lovely, nice lady on the computer, what Thea called it, um, to discuss the story, and then I took that offline and said, "Can you please create the scene, the shot breakdown?" I got some imagery out of what she had asked for, and I put that into a little movie and recorded her voice and gave her her little film. So basically, the idea that you are going to make a movie with the Harry Potter 2 snake, quality might not be absolutely right, but you damn well can create an experience and get a visual understanding and learn some new tools to help you get a step closer to achieving that reality.
Awesome. And if a 6-year-old can do that, imagine what someone who's really, looking at pursuing a bachelor's course could actually do. It's amazing. It's amazing. I mean, awesome. I think talking about these stories. I think stories are such an important part of our lives and such a interesting way to get certain points across. And I think some really interesting and valid points have come out in the course of our conversation. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much. It's just, regardless of what you do, we're in the industry of creating dreams, allowing people to be inspired. The limitation that I want to see our students have, any student have, I don't want the limitation to be technology. I want the limitation to be the limits of the human construct. The idea of the limitation is your creativity, as opposed to the idea of the limitation is the technology. And that's what we work really hard to try and do, is to say, right, so this is your goal, this is what you want to achieve. Maybe we can't achieve that with this type of technology, but could we try and layer it with this, and this, and get the same result? Let's try, let's have a play. tertiary environment, learning environment, any environment that'll allow you as a person to learn and grow, needs to find a way to have humility, to be able to be humble, to be able to the Maori here have a word tuakana teina, and that means big brother, big brother
Okay.
teaching little brother, um,
Sure.
and and that doesn't go. That's the connection. It's not one way. It's got to go this way.
Awesome.
Often in my first lessons, I'll come in and say, I'm so glad all of you are here. Individually, I know nothing. I know a little tiny piece of my world, but that's not as much as collectively we'll know everything. So I'm here to help. I'm here to facilitate, but we're here to drive this learning. We're here to drive this conversation, because that needs to start from this is the industry. The industry is a big, huge family of people working together to create a single output. And why should it be any different when you're learning?
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for making time for our podcast once again, Professor Aryan. And it was an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's so nice to have a chat and talk about this amazing industry that we're involved in.
I think we've unlocked some fantastic content here with Professor Aryan. Follow us on YouTube to get notifications as and when new content goes live. This episode has been produced by the fantastic team at Zista, which includes Russell Aldridge, Danish Shah, Gaurav Patil, and Udita Rana. This is your host, Amit Ahuja, signing out. Till we meet again, stay curious.